For this episode of Coffee with Closers, I'm sitting down with Klyn Elsbury. She's a prolific author, a world-renowned speaker, a corporate sales trainer, and a podcast host who has dedicated her life to helping individuals and businesses succeed. Along with her best-selling book, I Am the Untold Story of Success, Klyn's neuroscience-backed strategies and mindset principles have been used throughout corporate America, helping executives and their sales team create a unique competitive advantage. Stay tuned for my conversation with Klyn, where she shares practical wisdom for entrepreneurs and business leaders using neuroscience-backed strategies.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey, Klyn, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I made coffee.
I have my tea, so I know the show is Coffee with Closers. So obviously everyone has a story of overcoming personal obstacles, and you have an amazing story of overcoming personal obstacles to become an entrepreneur, and I couldn't even believe that. But could you share with our audience a little bit about your journey of how you became an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the fun entrepreneurial dilemma is most of us are unemployable, right? So that's why we're entrepreneurs, because nobody else wants us. Where it gets interesting is my unemployability comes from the genetic condition known as cystic fibrosis. It's a rare disease. Not many people know of it. I think there's 30,000 cases in the world. And basically what it is it's a thing where my mucus in my lungs is full of thick, sticky, gross stuff. And when it comes in contact with a virus, and a virus could be as simple as what's in houseplants, it takes my lung function from roughly 70% where I am today to as low as 30%. And I require immediate hospitalization for antibiotics. I've known it my whole life. And for some of the gravity of which I think you may ask, to answer the question, if you're born today, you will live to be 37 with the disease. I'm 33, so math, 89% gone. And I've been hospitalized 67 times. So I think that's explaining my elephant in the room.
That's an amazing story. And then from a corporate job, you went on government assistance, and now you run a corporation. With consulting business, so many things you've been accomplished. Just an amazing story in such a short time as well. That's amazing. Yeah. So how did that transition happen from going from a corporate job to government assistance and now starting a company from your technically your hospital room?
Yeah. First of all, I can tell you're a master in sales because you do your research before a show. So well done. Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I was in recruitment, which is not HR, it's recruitment. Totally different. Everyone thinks the same. They're not if you're great at this field. And what I had found was in being unemployable, I was fired so many times. And what's really cool about when you get fired all the time is you learn how to interview for the next position. Where that comes into play is after the last major firing, I was in my hospital room and, I was a career woman. I love the career. I love the hunt. I love the chase. And they had said, you know what, you're what's considered end stage. And end stage means we don't know how much longer you have, but get your affairs in order. And I listened. I filed for Social Security disability. I literally lost everything. I bought a house when I was 22. I was that successful. 22, buying a house. No, my daddy didn't pay for half of it. This was boss babe money. And I had to sell the house and I had to downgrade my car. To something that, according to the government, has to be worth less than $1,500. And I signed the papers for everything to be handed over to the government because I was too sick. And at that year, I believe it was that year, I spent 154 days in the hospital. So it really came out of my boredom. When you live in the hospital, it's you can only watch so many episodes of Impractical Jokers. I love the show, don't get me wrong. But I wanted to be something bigger, but I didn't know how. And all I knew was I was good at recruiting and I was good at sales. Everything else slightly below mediocre. And so I had the idea, if I start a company, I wonder if I can make it fully remote from the start and something that doesn't need me from the start. So if I died, people could still go on. And that became the entire foundation for the company's name is MK Foundation, Miss Klyn Foundation, is what is that legacy for when I die? Can I say I built something before that day?
That's
so there's
amazing.
A lot of nuances, but that's the gist.
Yeah, most certainly. And I know you've accomplished a lot in such a short time. You're a published author, you're a keynote speaker, you have a podcast, you're a podcast host, and a business and coaching business. So many things you could be proud of. What's the one thing that you're super proud of?
Oh, shoot. You've done this before. I was on a podcast earlier today, and the lady asked me, like, hey, which book or which keynote have you done that you're the most proud of? She worded it slightly differently, but that was the gist. Which one do you like the most, I think was her wording. And if I'm being authentic, which is what I think we would do on Coffee with Closers, I don't think as I look through my roster of what I've accomplished that I've had that moment yet. Taylor Swift in her Netflix documentary was talking about like that loneliness she still feels and how the praise from her audience is what fuels her to create another single. She hasn't felt like she connects to the world yet. I feel like that with my pride. I mean, the book, I've got my third one coming out in January, designed for sales teams. I don't think that's it either, So I'm hoping for that day when I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I'm not there yet.
So obviously you've learned a lot in the process of building your company, right? And have learned a lot from all these conversations that you're having as a business coach for entrepreneurs. What is the biggest lesson you learned in the process of building your own company?
You don't get the job. People assign you the job based on how you're performing now. So I'm going to tell a quick story. I have one of the companies. So think of what I do as I call myself a sales coach, but I'm an interim sales manager. So if your company's like, oh my gosh, we don't have a virtual bench of employees on the sales side, we don't have a sales playbook, we have nobody implementing, we have nobody listening to calls, that's when you need a Klyn, right? And so one of the companies that I'm the interim sales coach for, there's this girl in it, and I freaking love her. Like, she's tough. She's a tough cookie, kind of like the chip off your shoulder type of girl. And she's early in her 20s. So, I mean, we're talking all the acronyms and Urban Dictionary stuff. And what I'm most in love with is she's acting like my replacement before she's been given that title. So she's taken it on herself to help build out the playbooks and to understand and to create systems and processes and to double check my work. And she's not doing it from a place of vindictiveness, but she's doing it from a place of like, I just want to be the best version of me now. When it comes time for a promotion and her boss is like, hey, Klyn, what do you think of this chick? She's been acting like she has the job before she's ever had it. And I think if more of us acted like that before we were given the title, our entire lives would change. It's something that I'm so impressed with her on that. That's it.
And obviously, you made this transition, right? You became like this coach and trainer, and obviously some of the experience from your corporate world job. How did that transition actually even happen? How did you know that you were actually made to be a coach and a trainer, especially a high performance trainer or coach is what you call yourself?
Yeah, I mean, at some point people just keep buying. Mm-hmm. I think the thing I'm most insecure about is how many times, if you do research on my background, you're like, she's all over the place. I've studied my master's in neurolinguistic programming from the hospital, and then I got an emphasis in hypnotherapy, and then I started a recruiting company, and then I wrote 3 books. Like what does she do per se? And what I didn't realize is they were all the same, mm-hmm. right? They're all about helping people achieve that next level. And then I realized, I sat down once and I knew I wanted to get into the sales space, sales training, interim sales managers, like writing the playbook, so much fun. But I told myself I wasn't good enough because I already knew people that were great at it. And then it came down the question of, well, what's the difference between good and great? And it was literally as dumb as I was on Instagram one day, and it was like, there are people living the life you want to live just because they believed in themselves. And like, I'm a coach at this point. Like, I got my master's in NLP, and I'm sitting there like, I'm not good enough to be in this arena. So it happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it really clicked for me, is it's like, you don't have to be good to start. You just have to believe you're great and start. And that was the differentiator. Really cool.
So, yeah, obviously you're in leadership training. You're in coaching entrepreneurs and leaders. What is the characteristic that what is one characteristic that you're seeing in the top performing leaders?
Never mistake my niceness for weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I think a great leader, not a good one, let's go back to great. I think a great leader knows how to look at their team and don't, No Rules by Reed Hastings, they came out with this analogy, it's not, your company is not a family, it's a team. Mm-hmm. You watch The Last Dance, you start learning about sports, and you find the best companies, the best leaders, even taking it out of work, like when I was in dance a lot, like the best team, the leader's not afraid to say, listen, you're a great teammate. I love you. Can't have you sit with us. You're not up to par. And sure, you can teach, you can coach, you can guide, but some people, they're in the wrong career. And it could have been you who brought them into the company. But it's the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to be nice to you, but I'm not going to be easy on you because I expect excellence and I'm not afraid to make those tough decisions. Because chances are those tough decisions have kept me up at night way more than they're keeping you up. And it hurts the team to have a weakness that's not coachable. So I think that's it.
So obviously you interviewed a lot of people, especially for your book, and you've done a lot of research on neuroscience. So how do you integrate neuroscience into coaching and training people?
How do you not? Sorry.
You're the expert.
You're never inviting me back. That was a neuroscience trick, by the way. That's called, there's something to do there with cognitive biases. Mm-hmm. So usually the greatest thing you can do as a coach is ask the question slightly different back at the person, because they already know. There's this whole line of like, you can't do this. Well, how do you know you can't? How do you not know you can't? How do you not know you could? How do you not know you couldn't, can't? And like, it starts to sound a little hokey, but as you go through the questions, you're like, oh. So it's all about like changing the paradigm of the person that you're working with. So the way you integrate neuroscience into everything you do is just like muscle memory. The more you learn, the more it becomes instinctual. And, if it's 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, you start studying the brain and patterns just happen. So you don't integrate it, you just become it, if that makes sense. I say champions are built, not born. You've probably seen that on my website. And you don't necessarily just wake up and you're like, I'm a champion. Like, you're built on it the entire time. So when I face moments of opposition, it literally is as simple as taking a step back and saying, what is the problem? What really is the problem? What else could the problem be? And then you ask yourself different questions constantly until you think you found your version of the truth.
So obviously you figured out how to use neuroscience for sales and marketing, right? And you've written a book around that. So, I mean, without sounding like you're manipulating someone, right? How do you leverage neuroscience in that buying process or in that sales process?
Beautiful question. So in some ways, everybody thinks sales already is manipulative. And I would push back saying, how many times have you gone into a store? Let's say that fancy suit you're wearing. You've gone into the store and you're just trying to find that blazer. And the salesperson's like, well, we have t-shirts, we have socks. Do you want to hear about our discounts? You're like, bro, I just need this freaking blazer. And they don't get it. Wouldn't it be nice if this guy knew 101 on sales? When the customer wants something, shut up, take him to the blazer, pull it out on the rack, and then say, this blazer looks really great with a blue shirt. Would you like to try it on? It's also in your size. Now you're grateful. So I shy away from anybody thinking that sales is manipulation. They think that because they were unfortunately dealing with a salesperson who wasn't competent, and a strong leader would have fired them or coached them. No, but I think when you are helping enough people get to what they want, there is no manipulation. And all neuroscience is equipping the person to understand the sales process better. If I know what you're thinking and I can gauge what you're thinking, well, then you'll actually like, respect, and have deeper rapport with me. And that's just what being a great salesperson is. So hope that answered that. I felt like that was a little wordy, but I haven't had my coffee yet.
So especially when you talk about marketing too, right? Now, today marketers are salespeople in some sense because they're leveraging their content, their channels, all of that to entice people to take the action, right? Whatever that action might be. So in terms of what are some practical action items that you can provide a marketer in terms of leveraging that neuroscience into their content strategy or overall marketing?
Yeah. So the most basic one is something called VACOG. Okay. So VACOG stands for, you don't even need to write it down because you already know, don't you? Is VAKOG. V is visual, A is auditory, K is kinesthetic. So how things feel, which could be as simple as I feel my pink lip gloss, or I feel an emotional connection. And then the O is olfactory, so how things smell, and the G is gustatory. So let's say you're doing your online funnels, okay? You're building out funnels in hopes to capture email addresses and sell on the back end. Cool. You got that going. Well, you need to know, first of all, what are you selling? And chances are, if you're at the point where you're building funnels, you know what you're selling. So if I'm selling candles, which one do you think I'm going to capitalize on? I'm going to capitalize on the vision, right? So the way that the flame flickers, right? So vision, the way the flame flickers. Sounds really pretty when you say it out loud. If I were doing auditory, maybe it's the crackle of the fireplace. So now I'm thinking a calm, serene place with the snow falling, because that's another visual. You smell that scent. So now if it's a funnel, I know I'm creating a pine scent, and I'm going to talk about the aroma, what is that word? Oh my word. Extraordinary aromatherapy of pine needles. I'm going off the cuff here. And then you really lay into those principles. So use all of the 5 senses in your copywriting and in your wording. And you can do that just as well as a candle company as you can literally anything, and just rely on people, what they're using in that moment.
So that's basically how you will leverage that into that, including that in the marketing strategy.
Totally. And then you recap what they say. If it's in a face-to-face conversation, I'm going to recap what you say. I call it the 3 BRs. So I'm going to recap what you said, repeat it back to you 3 times.
And have you seen marketing and sales where people are completely going, like nothing what you just described, right? Have you seen that in real world examples of where you're like, man, this is just breaking all the laws?
Every company I'm hired to help with. Because what usually happens is an entrepreneur or CEO starts a company, they're good at sales. Then they hire their buddy. Their buddy's good at sales. And now there's 2 totally different ways of selling, so they can never calibrate on performance. And then the buddy hires a buddy of a buddy. The company grows. Thank goodness the product's great. And then they look at it and they're like, well, we don't know what we did to get successful. So what do we do now? And it's like, you go back to the basics we should have done. And that's the entrepreneurial plight. So it's all interchangeable. And by the way, can you have a successful company without putting neuromarketing in it? Absolutely. Neuromarketing, neuroscience related to sales just makes it easier to scale and grow quicker.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you create a lot of content, you have podcasts, you're writing books, you have an entire library of courses online, right? So all of these things that you're putting out, how do you know what kind of content to create? Because I know content is becoming an extremely powerful tool people use for promoting their personal brand or even the corporations, So how do you determine what kind of content to create for yourself?
I have absolutely no idea. So I've created, if you've gone through some of my courses, I've created some horrible courses. I thought it was a good idea, wasn't. So it comes down to checking and talking with your market. I have a rule, and it's so unscientific. If 3 people from 3 different social sections ask me about the same thing in a week, probably a need there. So if like you, who I don't know as well yet, ask me about sales playbooks, and then my fiance asked me about sales playbooks, and then somebody from my dance squad asked me about sales playbooks, I think that's a sign. And I've had a lot of misses where I'm like, this is it, and then it's wrong. So it comes back, and as you know, man, like it always comes back to talk to your target market, get to know them. Where I've gone off, so I wasn't listening because I cared about what I wanted, not what the market wanted. That was a pretty good reality check.
So obviously, you're an entrepreneur. You're doing a lot in terms of coaching and consulting others. if you had to give your younger self an advice, what advice would you give your younger self?
Don't buy everyone else's courses. No, it's funny. I was asked that recently. And like, I went down the course rabbit hole because when you're thirsty for knowledge, you'll spend $2,000 on a course thinking it's the answer to your problems, like left and right. And I dropped so much money into courses from gurus, right? People way more famous than I'll ever be. And wasn't that content rich? I was buying their brand. I wasn't buying their intellect. And then I realized they don't have a lot of intellect. And it was better for me to try and actually pay attention to what was happening than to study what they were selling. So just be careful of the course rabbit hole. If I could do anything, I'd get about 15 grand back. And rather than invest in someone else's intellect, I would have used it to try to learn advertising and scale my own.
Mm-hmm. It's a good advice. I think I find books more productive for me than just getting wisdom and knowledge off of someone who spent 30 years of their experience and turned that into a book, right? In your case, you've written multiple books. And if you can get it for $15, not $2,000. So that's the value of that. And obviously we as entrepreneurs, the one thing that we don't have enough of is the time, right? So I'm sure when what you said, you're building champions, you're making those champions. How are you empowering and coaching these people to maximize their time? And do you have any specific productivity hacks?
Great question. And now you're bringing out my psycho. Watch. It's just out of reach. Hold on. So I have every year, I make my fiance and I a custom calendar, which I then bullet out into what I'm doing every single day, color coded based on how many clients I have. If I have 10 clients, 10 colors. If I got 4, I got 4 colors. And this way, every client gets a day. So if there's somebody that's a little more hands-on, where they need a lot of help, they're going to get 2 days. And so we break it out by day. And now we both know by day is important. And they tell you to look at your long-term goals. But when you have a life-altering condition, long-term goals don't apply. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to crush the 13-week sprint. And I found a company, I'll give you my affiliate code. I'm kidding, I don't care. Where it works in 13-week sprints. It's called the Best Self Journal. And I literally do, every week, I create my weekly objectives, and then I track it in the actual day planner. I don't even know what y'all are going to see, so good luck with that. We ain't looking at that page. There's some competition. So then I track it on the day planner, and then I give myself a gel pen colored heart. Is this too much from what you were asking for?
No,
you know what?
Good.
You signed up to do the podcast with me. And then every day that I did everything on my planner, I give myself a little gel pen heart. And then at the end of the 13 weeks, I take a few days off. I go a little cray-cray. And I reset for the next 13 weeks. And ideally, what you want is you have what's called an MVP 2020 or 2021 based on the year. And that is the year goal. And then you break it down into those 13-week sprints, into those weekly plans, into those dailies, set against a yearly.
Is MVP like minimum viable product? What exactly does it stand for?
This is a Klyns acronym. So thank you for that clarity. It's called... oh my gosh, it's Master Vision Plan.
Nice.
So it's, and every year, here's what's funny about my Master Vision Plan. I don't follow any of it, but I can accomplish more in those 13 weeks than I can in that entire year. So then it's just stacking it up and seeing what happens. And what's funny is I'll put down what I want. Like I want, I don't know, let's just say 400,000 in revenue, right? I want 400,000 in revenue. Well, what I find is like through selling my Shark School marketing course, right? What I find, you fast forward at the end of the year, it's like, I hit that, but in sales playbook and consulting, not for my online course. So it's interesting to see like how close I was in a totally different category than what I set out on. And so for me, it becomes fun.
And obviously, you're an entrepreneur, like you said, you're setting goals and visions and everything else. And you had an interesting story of how you overcame obstacles and became an entrepreneur. But if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't want to be that interview who it's like, I do nothing different. I'm happy with how my life turned out, because I think to say that means you're less authentic than your truest self. All of us have regrets. I don't care who you are. There's something you did that one time. And yeah, sure, it taught you a lesson, insert all the happy vibes there. And you kind of waste your own life, right? So the thing I would say I wasted part of my life on was insecurities. I took forever officially owning this sales space because I thought everybody was brighter than me. I have a mentor who's world renowned in this field, really great friend. His name's Jack Daly. Everybody go buy his books before mine. And I stayed away from sales consulting because there's guys like Jack out there. And then what I found is when I embraced this and I was like, you know what? Nope, I'm putting all my chips on this table. I'm burning the boat. I'm getting rid of anything that's not serving me. I'm going all in. I found he was happy. He's like, you should have done this 3 years ago. What took you so long? And I was like, well, you were better at it. And he goes, probably not. I'm like, what are you, like, that's insane. So I wonder what would have happened if all of us look at our careers and we find that thing that we want to go all in on, and then we just tell our brain to shut up and go for it. I think that would be mine.
Yeah, you may have just answered my question here. What advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, just freaking go, man. Like, if I waited for all of the validation to think I was worthy, I'm never going to be worthy. And it was interesting. By the time I finally was like, okay, yep, this is my jam, I'm going. Everyone literally that I thought would think I was ridiculous was like, what took you so long? Like, they were annoyed with me. I lost respect for not standing in my own light out of fear that I wasn't good enough to stand in it. Like, how screwed up of a world are we in when that's the reality? But that was my reality.
Well, I'm glad that you took the leap and went on to start this business and written 3 books and now coaching hundreds of champions, which is amazing story. So what advice do you have for someone who's aspiring to a business leader or an entrepreneur?
Embrace the suck. It's, I was attached to oxygen tanks long before I was doing podcasts in my penthouse. Like, wow, that sounds really pretty, alliteration. But that's true. I remembered, and I'll tell you a story, and I don't talk about this much, but I'm very respectful of you. And for those of you who don't know, I gave Samuel quite a difficult time booking this. So this man knows his follow-up skills. So I'm gonna give you a story that I don't really talk about. I applied back in the day to teach others who have terminal illnesses how to build a business. I thought that would be my life path. And I was really excited for it. And at the time, I only had maybe 6 figures in revenue. Like, I was not a great business owner. But I really wanted to teach others what was possible. And the application came back actually denied. And they said nobody with a terminal illness cares about business or growing their career. And I said, okay. And I left it at that. And then it wasn't until a while later I'd heard, the story of, I think it's Roger Bannister, 4-minute mile, bro. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm going to run the 4-minute mile. And everyone's like, yeah, nobody cares to do that. It's not even possible. You're wasting your time. If he would have given up, we wouldn't have known that was possible. And I think all the blessings I have received came because I did not listen to those people who knew more than I did about what I was capable of. And it's interesting because there's now some things in the works where I'm the one they're calling and saying, hey, I've got this friend. She's really sick and she's stuck in the hospital and she wants to start an Etsy shop. And I'm not even an e-com girl. What would you do? She's the only one with her condition who's ever been an entrepreneur. And I'm like, now who's talking? And so I think that, I don't even know if that answered the question, but like, that's what clicks for me is it takes one person with a sprint of insane courage to show what wasn't done to be that ripple effect. And most people don't even know the name Roger Bannister. I barely do, but it made a difference.
Well, what a great note to end this conversation. Kayla and I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm glad that you joined me for this conversation. Wish you all the best in your entrepreneurial journey, and I pray that you would empower a lot of other entrepreneurs to do great things in their life and career.
Amen. Thank you, my man. And thank you for following up. I really appreciate it.
Most certainly.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by OneIMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.